All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my really great pleasure to welcome you on this open panel discussion entitled The Role of Research Infrastructures for Technological Sovereignty of the European Union. Today's discussion takes place in the immediate aftermath of the ESFRI Stakeholder Meeting hosted under Polish presidency of the European Union, which is a symbolic and strategic alignment that emphasizes the strong commitment of Poland to shape research and innovation agenda for Europe. As we stand now for crossroads of technological acceleration, geopolitical realignment, and global competition, the question of European technological sovereignty is no longer an abstract or a question. It is essential. What does this sovereignty mean? Is the capacity to develop, produce, and deploy critical technologies. It should be done independently, but not in isolation. So what's behind this word? In this context, the research infrastructure ranging from the pan-European laboratories, large-scale installations, down to the distributed data platforms are not only tools for the scientific excellence. There are pillars for strategic autonomy. The research infrastructures connects science with industry, policy with practice, and national ambition with the European unity. But sovereignty is not only a European matter, it has a regional dimension too. Countries such as Poland, with a fast developing research landscapes and the widening scientific ecosystem, have a unique opportunity to contribute to this transformation, provided we invest smartly and coordinate effectively. The subject of the discussion relates to a priority of the Polish presidency, namely European security, addressed across multiple dimensions. In this broader context of security, today's panels will help us to explore how the research infrastructure can support the technological sovereignty of the European Union, and with an emphasis on building a Europe that is innovative, competitive, and strategically autonomous. I would like to welcome not only ESFRI stakeholders, participants, but also I would like to welcome and acknowledge for the very large presence of the science representatives from the Kraków area. This underlines how important for the region is the subject of the security and sovereignty, and the question to what's the role of the research infrastructure into this process is. Many years development of Kraków and the Małopolska region is in direct connection with the significant investments into the research infrastructures, and this have happened at many universities and institutes. Solaris synchrotron is not the only large-scale facility in the Kraków area. Actually, we have a cyclotron operated by the Institute of Nuclear Physics, Polish Academy of Science. We have a Cyfronet, a supercomputer center driven by HGH University. We have many infrastructure centers. We have many core center facilities and many specialized laboratories. So again, for our region and for Poland, a question of technological sovereignty and the role of the research infrastructure is of vital interest. And as a final word, I would like to welcome also the LIPS General Assembly participants, because the ESFRI Stakeholders Meetup has finished. We are starting another meeting, and I'm very glad to see all the LIPS representatives that represents actually large-scale facilities across the Europe. With that, I would like to introduce our panelists, and we decide to drive this discussion with support of two groups, if I say so. So on my right-hand side, we have diplomacy and policy representatives. And on my left-hand side, I have leaders of the research infrastructures. So Mr. Cédric Pelletier represents a French diplomatic mission here in Kraków. He brings a really deep experience from the world of the international and intercontinental diplomacy, which is crucial perspective when we discuss how the technological sovereignty must navigate complex alliances and global independences. Mr. Michael Arentoft is a key voice in shaping the European research area. At the European Commission, he leads the unit that is responsible for research infrastructures and open science policy, which is, of course, essential building blocks of the Europe's scientific and technological strength. Mr. Goszczynski, unfortunately, we were expecting that Mr. Andrzej Szeptycki, Undersecretary from Ministry of Science, will join us, but unfortunately, due to the unforeseen obligations that have been already mentioned in the morning, also for the other representatives, he couldn't join us. But we are very grateful that Mr. Michał Goszczynski, the director in the Department of Innovation and Research at the Ministry of Science, he brings a deep expertise in the national innovation policy, and his department plays a critical role in shaping how Poland should leverage science and research to enhance its technological competitiveness. And I should mention Mr. Goszczynski also supervised the national research infrastructure road mapping processes. I will now move to the research infrastructure leaders. I will start with Professor Antje Kepler, who represents the ERIC Forum, is the chair of ERIC Forum. So by this, she brings a huge, extensive experience in the international project leaderships, and she embodies the strength of the cross-border scientific cooperation with the hallmark of the ERIC model. Professor José Luis Martínez, a chair of the ESFRI, he is a driver of the European Union roadmap for strategic research infrastructures and investments into these infrastructures, and his work shapes how the Europe defines and supports its most critical scientific platforms. And Professor Helmut Dosch, who is visionary of the League of the Accelerator-based Photon Sources. His leadership in the synchrotron and accelerator field, and the example how one can effectively navigate frontier research infrastructure to fuel innovation in material science, health, and technology. Professor Helmut Dosch is a many-year director at DESI, which is a major hub and one of the most world's leading particle accelerator centers. So with that, I would like to move now to the questions, to the core of the discussion. And actually, we divided the question into 3 rounds, but because of the time limits, probably we'll stick to 2 of them. And the first 2 rounds are aimed to address first a question, what does the technological sovereignty means? And while the second round of the question will address more what can be part of the strategy when we talk about the technological sovereignty. And my first question will go to Mr. Cedric Peltier. So from the diplomatic perspective, how should European technological sovereignty be understood today? Does it mean it's striving for complete independence, or it's more building calibrated, resilient partnerships within the global systems? How would you define, from your perspective, what the sovereignty, technological sovereignty would mean?
Well, thank you very much, Jakub, for this very question that I had to give a lot of thought to, because it's not that easy to sum up. And first of all, let me tell you, I'm very glad and happy to be with you all today. It's a pleasure to get out of my comfort zone and talk about research. You know, diplomacy basically is to defend the interests of your country. Sometimes defend its values. That's what it's about, and I think that can be extended to a more global concept, to the European level, but also to the scientific sphere. You said so a few times. Technological sovereignty must be regarded as a vital interest for Europe. So that's where diplomacy comes in handy. Diplomacy is basically, to sum it up, we have competitors, and we have people that swim in their own lane, right? They are the swimming pool and they go forward in their own lane. Diplomacy is how do we make it easy for these people to meet, because once you get together, you realize that you all like to swim, but you don't know what your competitor does. And once you know it, you feel like, hey, that's a very good idea, a good point, and I'm learning something from it, and I'm improving. So that's what diplomacy and cooperation actually is all about. Diplomacy, scientific diplomacy, actually goes beyond just fostering scientific and technological cooperation, which it's confused for that sometimes. Bilateral cooperation is obviously extremely important, but I think that to be competitive on a global scale, we need to have agreements involving and including several countries, such as those established at the European level, which we are talking about. Let's take a moment and think about the ITER project. You've probably heard about this project ITER. The goal is to develop a reactor to test the feasibility of using nuclear fusion as a clean and sustainable source of energy. In the medium term, this energy source could lead to the independence, the sovereignty in the field of energy of the European Union. That's what we do on the European level, and in my opinion, critical. I think that we also, for a moment, and for the time being, think about the let's say, withdrawal of the United States, which has historically been one of the main partners of the European Union. And many, obviously, of our technological advancements stem from the US, so if we talk space or fusion or energy. But maybe we've grown complacent over the years, and maybe we've become probably a little bit overly dependent on external sources for scientific equipment and electronic components that are essential to innovation. So that's where European Union needs to strengthen its independence by also improving the training of researchers and engineers, and also, and I think it's extremely important, by offering an attractive work environment that can help address the issue of a brain drain, which I think is we are trying to reverse actually now. So it's very important, in my opinion, to find the right balance between independence and cooperation between the borders of the Union. The balance comes at a cost, and Europe has to now invest massively, as you just said, and probably without delay, in key strategic sectors to reinforce its autonomy. But then here, and that's a thought and a key takeaway, that there's quite a paradox, because science is inherently international, and it really goes with the exchange of knowledge and exchange of researchers, and that without borders. But we also have to be able to control what is being done with science, and we need to put borders, but in a way that respects the free flow of ideas and of people. And I think that's quite challenging these days. So the question in my mind is how far can cooperation go? Ultimately, to guarantee the technological independence of the EU, we need international cooperation for fundamental research, strategic partnerships we need, and at the same time we need a clear understanding of the limits that must not be exceeded, and that's the only way to preserve such independence. And I would probably have one very last point, not to be overly long. Having major European research infrastructures, like you have here in Krakow, and actually I'm very amazed by the sheer quality of the infrastructures we see here, be it your synchrotron or the supercalculator, just to name a few from the Jagiellonian. So it is huge and basic foundation for innovative technological development in the EU, and we have to strive for that. We have to support it. So that would be my main point on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this voice. Mr. Michał Goszczyński, so if we would move now from the diplomacy to the national level policy, how would you address then the goal of the technological sovereignty in Polish science and innovation policy? How would you reconcile it with the need of international cooperation? So it's a little bit what have been mentioned just by Cedric.
So, in my opinion, technological sovereignty is an extremely important part of Europe's competitiveness, and of course, by Europe I mean also Poland, of course. Especially in the current geopolitical context, we need to think about technological sovereignty to produce technology, to produce knowledge in Europe without any external help, I would say. And by that, I also mean that we as Europe must be united in this regard. So we need to, in order to develop further, we need to develop in all countries at the same time, in all the member states. So we should concentrate not only on, for example, trying to be better here in Poland than in other member states, but we need to, in a sustainable way, develop further in all the member states of the European Union, because. We need, by this I don't mean that we shouldn't also have some leading roles in this regard. We need to map our strengths, map our weaknesses, and in this regard create networks, by international cooperation, of course, by our scientific community that use and utilize the strength of every member state, of every scientific community in all the member states, in order to be more prepared for whatever time will bring us.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Mikhail, now moving to your area. When we talk about the sovereignty, would you see from the point of view of European level, we would talk about some strategic sectors, we pick strategic sectors, or we should encompass broader ecosystem as a whole? And actually, what policy frameworks does the new era can set in this context? I mean, what does it foresee for specific role of the research infrastructures in this context?
Yeah, thank you for the question, or actually three questions, I think, in one. The first one, you put an or between the two. Should we select critical sectors, or should we look at the broader socioeconomic impact? I think it's not an or. I think it's an and, but then at the same time there's a balance. There's a balance between really targeting the broader socioeconomic system, and of course we do that when we need to tackle systemic vulnerabilities. So this is of course what we do when we support research and innovation. It's what we do when we support development of skills and training was mentioned as well. It's what we do to create the framework conditions for doing the research and innovation which is needed to have new technologies and to have sovereignty also in these technologies. The balance, I would like to use the word balance because it's shifting. It's shifting exactly towards what you mentioned, to focus on sectors that are particularly critical, technologies that are particularly critical. Why are we doing that? Well, because we need to have the control, we need to have the resilience. You mentioned the word security, closely linked also to stability. We issued last year a communication on economic security. And a very important part of that is a list of critical technologies. There are 4 of them that we have done already an assessment, both at the European level and at the member state level. And it's semiconductors, it's AI, it's quantum, it's biotech. But there are many other critical technological sectors that we are prioritizing at the European level. Connectivity, sensing, space, energy, but also robotics and advanced materials as well. So we can see it shifting in these sectors because that's where we are perhaps particularly dependent on foreign supply or foreign collaboration. It's where we have now increasingly geopolitical changes also that have an impact on how we can maintain technology development and sovereignty in this area. And it's also where we see disruptions. Disruptions in the supply chain, disruptions in access to data, disruptions in funding streams, and in international partnerships as well. one example, of course, where we make very important investments, I'll take the one which was mentioned this morning, CHIPS Act. So although the number is only 43 billion over a number of years, and I'm not sure the comparison with the investments in China by certain companies is comparable, but I'll leave it at that. It shows that we are investing. We are investing under the CHIPS Act in pilot lines in what we call important projects of European common interest. And again, as I said, these are tens and tens of billions that we are investing. That was the first question. Now, on the other two, the place in the new era policy agenda and also research infrastructures. So we all know that research infrastructures not only was part of the first agenda, also the second one, and we know now it will also continue to be part of the future ones, because now it's a structural policy, and it's not only about access and sustainability, but also the word resilience is there, and that's closely linked to technology sovereignty. So we certainly foresee a role of research infrastructures. Let me mention also a few other actions I think that are in the policy agenda. There's the SET plan. So strategic energy technologies is also part of the ERA policy agenda. AI, of course, with a particular focus on the use of AI in science. Enhancing research security, so this is a broader political aspect of the ERA agenda, but also industrial transformations and the role of technology infrastructures. And for those of you who have attended Stakeholder Forum, you know that we are preparing a strategy consisting of covering both research infrastructures and technology infrastructures. I'll stop here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Now it's time for the response from the research infrastructure leaders. How do they see this area? I will maybe ask Antje first, if I may. I think I will ask all three of you with the same area of question, but you're a research infrastructure leader, and now it's the question which I think is extremely important, is the true technological sovereignty achievable without control over a full control over a global value chains, and what are actually the key barriers that must be overcome on the path toward the technological autonomy. So how do you see this with this perspective?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jacob, for the invitation and this opportunity to talk here on behalf of ERIC Forum. I would like to answer this question in two parts, and the first one can be short because also the previous speakers already addressed it. I think full control probably is not possible, not realistic, and maybe also not something we should really aim for, because this is still one planet, and especially when you look at research and the challenges that we're trying to tackle with research, they are global. But then again, a lot of research infrastructures are facing severe problems in the recent years. I think I don't have to go into any details here, but I would like to say that it's important that we wake up to work or understand European research infrastructures as an important step towards strategic autonomy. And again, from the perspective that we are already looking at a very rich ecosystem, a landscape. We are not starting at zero at this point, that we're waking up and saying, oh, hey, God, we have to do something about how we work together in Europe when it comes to research infrastructures. But we discussed now also for the past 2 days, where are still those barriers to make maybe Europe better, stronger when it comes also to our technical or technology sovereignty. And it's for those of you who have attended the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum, you have heard this before several times now, but it's all about better funding, better coordination of funding, communication, understanding the value of the staff working across the research infrastructures, mobilizing them, but also providing the means to the European researchers to fully benefit of our offer that we have. And I think this can really build long-term the sovereignty that we are aiming for here.
Excellent, thank you so much. José Luis, if I may ask you the same question. So, the true European technological sovereignty, full control over global value chains, and what are the barriers then? How would you address
Of course,
this?
it's a very difficult question. So but I will start maybe to be provocative in the sense this European technological sovereignty maybe is a dream. It's not really a real possibility. I will explain. So I never drive a boat, I never sailing, but I heard that when you try to drive a boat, you have it's called in English the line of the horizon. You try to achieve there, to approach there, but you never arrive. Always when you arrive, this is moving. So actually this, if we consider that this is a goal, certainly will be a moving goal. You never will achieve that. It's impossible. This is one point. However, I think something like Endless Frontier, the famous report for the political science. But okay, besides that, I think we have to achieve, or we have to try to approach as much as possible in a continuous way. And I think one of the bottlenecks, of the very important first step, I would say, without that you forget about, in my opinion, is people. You need to have very good scientists and engineers who understand the technology. Otherwise, you are totally lost. I mean, if you want to buy the technology, even if you buy to a friend country, or someone in your sphere of influence, always can have some kind of red button in the system. So you need people, scientists and engineers who knows the technology very well. And this is the first step to control or to be able to achieve as much as possible along the line of European technological sovereignty. Okay, let's go now to more precise or more particular cases. I mean, in particular, if you are really a manager of one of the research infrastructure, the first thing you have to do clearly is try to diversify your supply chain. Never depend of only single supplier. Even, I will say, even it's a good friend, because you are always in the hands of only one supplier, you are totally lost. So I also can give you my personal experience, because I belong to another committee in France related with nuclear energy, and there, for instance, supply of the initial fuel element has to be very diversified, because you can have very good friends today that maybe will not be for tomorrow. And so diversifying the supply chains. And I said before, number one, people. People with the skill and the knowledge able to understand deeply the technology. Otherwise.
Thank you so much. But I think you very nicely drive me to the Helmut as a many-year director of DESI, so we can still ask about how you diversify this area. But yeah, the question stays the same, right? So if you could now share your opinion on that.
Let me also give my perspective to that. First of all, we heard a couple of already very intelligent interventions here. Maybe a little bit in contrast to José Luis. I mean, I would, that Europe has the ambition to develop a sovereign ecosystem, I think is an ambition we should not give up. And so even in a normal world, I would go for it. But now, where we are losing friends left and right, I think there is no other way of going in this direction. But let me say it needs, and Michael already mentioned something, and Antje, one needs a relentless analysis of what are the barriers in Europe, a really relentless analysis. So bringing everybody together and analyze what is this, what barriers we have among. So the major barrier is, and be sure that I'm defending here research infrastructure, because I'm a research infrastructure person. I'm defending this very strongly. But we always make the same mistake. We are developing strategies in silos, and this is wrong. So I can tell you, I have a whole list of things which should be done in order to go to this technological sovereignty in Europe. And none of them can be solved by leaps or by another infrastructure. but none of them can be solved without them as well. So we have to go beyond this silo thinking. We really have to put all the stakeholders in Europe together and develop a future plan where, with the aim of this technological sovereignty, which we badly need to approach. And I'd give you one example. As we speak, the whole world is embarking into a new, so to speak, dimension how we develop technology in the future. And the US do it, the Chinese do it. It's based on data-based materials development. That means the future advanced materials will all be, and the relevant one, be developed with a new database which uses AI and so on in order to develop alternative materials to existing ones, which are for us maybe magnetic materials and stuff like this in a critical supply chain. The Chinese have a new program which says domestic supply chain. This is the new world. We are working on a technology which is based on a domestic supply chain. The Chinese can do that easier than we can, and we have a more difficult thing. But nothing speaks against it. That if you have one material which is used for a certain technology, cannot be replaced in the future by another material. So you need research to be done, and AI and data-based AI is the future for that. Now that the Americans have launched a program which is called the Materials Genome Project very early on. And don't believe that the Americans will give us the data if we need them. They would have not given us before Trump. And don't think about it now. So we have to develop a European database on materials, and here we need new regulations, removal of data protection laws which are different in the various member states. So this is very, very important. So again, LEAPS, I'm representing LEAPS, will not solve this problem. But you need LEAPS to solve the problem. You need the analytical facilities. And the Americans are using all the DOE labs in their supply chain discussion for future materials. And this is what we also should do. By the way, if you have something like this, which is really holistic and not silo type, that you get the possibility to do proactive thinking, not reactive. So to discover where will be future problems in supply chain development. So that you get into a proactive mode. And here you need you need the technology people talking to the infrastructure people and so on. And you need materials roadmaps for the future, which tell you where would we see future problems in that. So this would be early detection of materials risks, so to speak. This could all be done not today and not now and not tomorrow, but again I say we should aim for technology sovereignty, but we must go out of our silos. And I talk to our people also in the infrastructures, and I'm strongly defending that we must go out of this silo thinking, and better now, today than tomorrow, and we must become much faster. We must become much faster. So Michael Arentoft is doing a wonderful job, and so we are grateful for everything he does. But we must become faster. So we cannot wait until 2030 to develop a certain project plan. So we need to do it tomorrow. So without giving up quality and all the necessary things we have to take into account, but we must become faster. So my point is, get out of the silos and become faster.
Yeah, thank you so much for this voice. With this question, I mean, we finished this first round. I will not maybe summarize it much, but I mean, we have to agree that this technological sovereignty, I think it's José Luis mentioned, maybe it's not fully achievable in the 100%, but again, we should agree. We should agree with the Helmut that we should try to be as much as close to this horizon, right there, which you mentioned. So
José Luis is a good sailor.
Okay. But the second part of discussion, I'd like to turn a little bit into the elements, or would like to mark at least areas, in your opinion, what would be the key elements of the strategy of getting to this horizon we are discussing now, right? What would be the really most important elements getting us as much as possible towards the technological sovereignty? And I will stay this time with the research infrastructure representatives. And we'll start with José Luis again, if I can. So just the question, if you could explain, because as I mentioned, there is also many people not from the ESFRI stakeholders meeting. What's the priority of the technological sovereignty in the ESFRI processes and the ESFRI agenda? Is how much it is implemented? Is it discussed, or it's not discussed, or is it natural within? If you could comment on that.
Okay. I think, honestly, today has not been discussed very much in this case, but I think it's really becoming very, very important, this kind of agenda related with the sovereignty in the technological approach. And of course, I will say that really rely on the research infrastructure. And ESFRI is not really driving or operating research infrastructure. Of course, we are driving about this global strategy. And I think that from the global strategy of the research infrastructure related with the sovereignty of European technologies, I think it's very important to open this discussion. I completely agree that you have to break down the ideas to have different silos and try to get a more larger view and holistic view. But probably also, in order to do that, we have to fix priorities, because will be also extremely, I would say, very difficult if we try to do everything in parallel in every domain. So, of course, this point about take decision and priorities, this is probably one of the reasons why we are always getting, let's say, some delays, because it's a very difficult process and very iterative process, but we have to do that. But at the end of the day, I will say, if we try, that is another message, if we try to do this kind of things on top of the excellent science, on top of the best support to the user, on top of all the normal job, I would say, or responsibility of the research infrastructure, of course, with the same budget, I will think that will be a big problem. I never like to see, okay, we need more money and things like that, but certainly to do something else, something which is important not only at the level, of course it's important at the level of the research infrastructure, but also at the global political level of the European Union. We need some really resources dedicated to that, who comes really on top of the normal work, because that will means a complementary effort, a difficult task, and that cannot be done with the business as usual and the budget as usual. So that will be, and of course, prioritization with no silos, but really very clear goals. And if we want to do something else and complementary the one, on top of I said, because I try to integrate in the research infrastructure scenario at the normal job, has to be with the corresponding budget associated.
Okay, thank you so much. Antje, we know the power of ERICS, right? We know what's behind. I mean, what elements you think can be used to that could strengthen the European technological sovereignty, just based on the ERICS potential?
I think it's the actual character of the ERICS. I think all of you have heard us saying this before, that ERICS are a strategic asset for Europe. And I would like to come back to the point that was made by Helmut here about the silos. I think ERICs are the best example in Europe that we have started moving beyond the silos, because 28 of the 31 ERICs that we do have are distributed. So they have been combining scientific and technological expertise across borders already in Europe. And this is where our strength is. And some of you have also had this before, that the international partners often envy us for what we are building here in Europe with the European research infrastructures. And this is where the real strength is, and that we should carry forward. And maybe coming to new innovative technologies. I think the ERICs are already doing this, that we are onboarding technologies fresh coming from the tech developer labs. We can validate them in service with the research communities. That also leads then automatically to a better dissemination into the broader context of the research landscape in Europe, helps the companies to also increase the visibility of their new technologies, and at the end of the day supports Europe in building the technological sovereignty. And I think we are often being underestimated because of this distributed character in many cases of the ERICs.
Okay, thank you so much. Helmut, now, considering the LEAPS mission that actually was being created with your huge help, we would say what's more needed to effectively develop oriented or future-oriented technologies by means of LEAPS? What's they're missing still? You think that could really accelerate or to speed up, as you were saying, this mechanism of our facilities supporting really the technology in the Europe?
Just to follow up what Antti was saying, I fully agree that the ERIC idea is one of these ideas to overcome the silos. We at LEAPS have discovered the same thing 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Jean, where we said we had 19 facilities working rather independently, duplicate, so not very very efficient, but on a European scale, not in this strategic setting which is needed. And then we have created this LEAPS where we integrated 19 facilities in 10 different member states, they are working together now extremely efficiently together with industry, technology development, and we are turning now in a legal entity very soon, also as a message to the European Commission that we are very, very serious about our mission. So most of these LEAPS facilities have a strong national support in construction and operation, billions of dollars going to that. Hundreds, thousands of user hours are offered free of charge to European researchers, also to industry. They are charged if they don't publish. So it's open to innovators and to researchers in the same way. So when we want to make this next step forward, where we want to create an ecosystem, we need beyond this national funding, but we have to talk to the national funding agencies as well. The next step where we create a long-term commitment with economic innovators, where we open these facilities for common technology development. What we do now is, I think, a very interesting step forward, that we create new cooperations with industry on a long term now for technology development, which are useful for the facilities in order to stay competitive on a world level. But the next step, and I saw that in Infratech calls for 2027, to have the next step to also open these facilities for technology development beyond the scientific needs. And this is what we have, where I'm pushing very strongly. So I think all the necessary steps are on the table. But I would be happy if we would be faster in that. But I see that the boundary conditions, maybe it's naive what I say, and there is no faster way of doing it. I say that we are going in the right direction. So, but we need then, beyond what we get from the national funding, so to speak, something on top, and it's not too much, in order really to leverage the power of this infrastructure for technology development, for innovation, and finally for a European innovation ecosystem which would lead in many areas to technology sovereignty.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, having heard, this, what's the potential, say, of the research infrastructure in this area? I would like to shift back to you, gentlemen. Now, asking what are the expectations from your side, actually, towards the research infrastructures, right? So, how you would expect the research infrastructure can contribute to the technological sovereignty? And the second part of the question would be, do you think the instruments that under your umbrellas are sufficiently used by the technological or by the research infrastructures, or there is still some rooms for improvements regarding the actually available paths of the investments? So maybe if I would ask Mikael, if I may ask first you to address this area.
Yeah, thank you. There's always room for improvement, and I think you already referred to some of the things we are doing in terms of joint technology developments based on existing roadmaps, or even development of new ones based on commonalities between different technological components needed in the facilities or common needs. What can research infrastructures do? I think most importantly, it's very important that we stay world-class, that we stay at the cutting edge. Human resources is a very important part of that, to make sure that they have, to use your words, a deep understanding of the science and of the technology, and not to lose track of the primary mission, which is really to support and do excellent fundamental science, because at the end of the day, this is also what leads to new technologies, deep tech, and so on. So this is number one. Secondly, to stay open for access, also by new users, be they in other closely related disciplines, because we see more and more multidisciplinarity, but also for industry users, so another type of new users. Your second part of the question was on instruments. I think the instruments we have already, we are already supporting at the European level, because they have a European dimension, transnational access, very important, but also that we keep improving that in terms of being more sustainable, longer term, more integrated, avoiding the silos. I think it's very important. Again, we have launched exploratory actions. We will pilot new access schemes in 27. I think maybe you saw a draft, but I think what you mentioned is in 26 and the access is in 27. But of course, this is a first draft. The frameworks for co-development of technologies, very important. The road mapping exercises, the input that we get from LEAPs and similar coalitions is very important for us, and I hope you can see it's also reflected in the priorities we set. And the last point of being at the core of innovation ecosystems, and to consider also applications that go beyond the science market, I think is a very important role also, and an instrument also that we are offering, not necessarily in the research infrastructure part of the program, because it links very much also to innovation. A few new things, and also considering the developments of changing geopolitical situation in terms of cutting access to data, funding streams, new partnerships that need to be evolved. What we have in mind also as a new instrument or a new kind of support is to give support to infrastructures, risk management plans, mitigation plans, contingency plans, to address these issues of loss of access to data, or considerations for supply chains that might need, of course, also incentives for our side. And then also an instrument which is not a funding instrument, but in the same way as we have a charter for access to research infrastructures that we updated recently, we also want to specifically issue a charter for access to infrastructures by industry users, something we have already announced in the Startup Scale-Up Strategy of 28th of May. And the final guidance also is on applicable state aid rules whenever there are public research organizations that grant access to industry.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this feedback and the information, set of important, valuable information. Sir Goszczynski, so the same question to you. So what would be now from the perspective of national level, what's the expectations towards the research infrastructures, and are there any tools that could be still more or better, more efficiently used by the research infrastructures from your perspective?
So in a way I touched some of these elements in my previous answer, and I also heard some of the speakers that really brought joy to my heart, I would say. So I would say that from the national perspective, clear access policy to research infrastructures is a very important tool for a long-term industrial and scientific sovereignty. So I would say that this is a very important element. However, access alone is not enough, and I think that the experience and expertise that links towards building together an infrastructure is also an important element. So we should still try to fill the gaps in the I would say in map of research infrastructures, and in order to better utilize all the elements of expertise that we can have from all the member states, including also the countries that are on the goal to the research excellence. And from the point of view of the instruments, there is a lot to do still in Poland and in Europe. When it comes to Polish side, we are trying to introduce some new tools and instruments that will help research infrastructures to better cooperate with industry, to better link industry with scientists, to better link scientists with the infrastructures. So the exchange of information that is, I would say, the cornerstone of a good technological sovereignty would probably benefit from that. We also, with the cooperation of some of the infrastructures, already created a forum for the Polish infrastructures that we would like to continue in the coming years, so that our scientific community that is part of many different parts of research infrastructures can talk about their challenges that they face, the ideas that they have, and well, in order also to ensure that no research infrastructure is trying to open the door that was already opened in another part of the country. So we are looking forward to also to other similar options in the coming months and probably next year. So I think that would be that.
Now, Mr. Consul, giving you the final word, I think the diplomacy cannot expect probably much from research infrastructures, but maybe there are some elements, but also maybe there are some tools or some areas we are not aware completely that we can be offered by the diplomacy to support the processes we are discussing today.
Well, thank you very much. I think that after this very good discussion, we have to remember that innovation and thus research stems mostly from trying to get an answer to the unexpected. That's where everything comes from in innovation, right? Something you don't expect. And when we think about it, let's have one of the last very unexpected things that happened was probably COVID-19, and we saw it was extremely important to have a world-class infrastructures to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to something that was not expected. Not all innovation is made through and out of your garage. Some has been, of course, but not all of it. So we need infrastructures. But furthermore, the fact that you have very strong, good and high-level infrastructures brings talents And I think it's extremely important to know that they not only act as a catalyst for innovation, they also are attractive to the European research. And I think it's extremely important to put that. And we need to see research infrastructures not as only a tool, but a means. And for that, I think, and you alluded to it, they have to be evaluated very, very, very thoroughly and regularly to make sure that they are always looking to the horizon. And I think it's very true. We have to make sure that we're always giving the best, that we are always accessing the best and aiming for the horizon. I think that, of course, research infrastructures are very good levers to guarantee the EU's technological sovereignty. But I think that we have to think European while never preventing researchers from other countries to use our research facilities. Because this cross-border idea is, to me, extremely important. But we have to, I think, remain pragmatic in identifying the key challenges and our strategic priority areas, as you just said. In my opinion and France's opinion, there are four. The energy transition, I think, due to address climatic change. I mean, it's quite obvious. Biotech is another one. AI, of course, and space. And I believe that you have to look at the situation with ISS to understand how space is extremely useful and important. The US has hundreds of military satellites, right? France only has 9. All right, that's one thing already. The US invests 70 billion euros annually in the space sector. The EU, invests only 16 billion euros. You are talking about investment. So it's very difficult for the EU to win contracts and to achieve autonomy in the production of electronic components is also quite a challenge. So this being said, that's where research infrastructures come into play because they are, as I said earlier, and as you mentioned, a powerful magnet for talents. And so we need to leverage this to be able to attract the best. I know that we have in the US more and more difficulty for some research, notably in climate science and social science. So we need to attract them, right? And that's where the last Choose Europe for Science conference that was held in Paris last early May on the 5th, at the initiative of President Macron and in the presence of the President von der Leyen. This is the objective of this conference, to reflect on academic freedom and the fight against European dependencies in research. And Minister Szczepiński actually did chair one of the roundtables. And in that conference, a major plan was announced to welcome foreign researchers wishing to continue their work in Europe, with substantial support provided by the European Union. So that's one thing that is not used enough because it's brand new, but it has to be used to be efficient, I believe. Lastly, I think that when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, there's a misconception about the word intelligence. It has nothing to do with smart. It's all about data. It's only data, and the use of data. And I think that being cut from international databases or having it more difficult to access is a huge and critical challenge. And in that, I think it's extremely important that on a European level, we get a sovereign cloud that we can use for this data, because I think the key to everything we're talking about is data. And the last key I'm going to talk about that might be underused in my opinion is that whatever you all are doing here, science, innovation, research, I see and I witness from my diplomatic perspective that it's driven by passion. And I really feel that you all love what you do, you all have a passion for what you do, and you all talk about it with such passion that it has to be conveyed. And in that, I will tip my hat to you in Solaris, because you have kids come and visit infrastructures and you tell them, here in this beamline, we can tell you why strawberry ice cream tastes like strawberry. And we can also think about fighting cancer And that's exactly what you need to do. Explain what you do and bring the kids there, give them their passion, transmit it. It's not a EU tool. It's not a policy. It's not institutional. It's you. You can do that. You have the power to do it. And I think it's probably the most important and crucial point. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. That's a very nice message. Before getting the voice to the audience, I know Helmut still want to make a final remark.
If you allow me, I have an important European issue. Europe must continue to support Ukrainian scientists. Okay.
Thank you. That's a very important message. All right. We still have a few minutes maybe to ask some questions from audience, so maybe comments to the panelists. So the floor is yours, and please raise your hand. Don't be shy.
My name is Bernd Rech, Helmholtz-Zentrum Berlin, operating PESI2 as a research facility. I have a question to Cédric Pelletier, because you mentioned the importance of data, but certainly the data without data processing, without computing infrastructure. So I expect that you see the whole picture. And I just wanted to clarify this, because what we observe at the moment, for example, in close to Berlin, Brandenburg, Amazon is setting up the next big computing center. And if the data are processed by all the international big companies, and we have not the sovereignty on the data in this part, we are also losing them again. So I think there we need really a full European strategy.
Well, thank you for this remark. I absolutely agree with you. I know that we are in Europe not bad on computing and supercomputers. Honestly, I think here again in Krakow there's a great example of that. But you are very. It's very true that we need to have, and it works in everything, the whole chain. But then again, we also need to work together and what we do best. And you know, the best player will be the one setting the norms. So on that we have to strive, and one country alone can't do it. The whole of EU is competitive. Yeah, you're right.
I agree, and this is, I think, also important for the research infrastructures, because we can play a key role also on the data strategy.
Thank you. Other questions or comments or remarks? If not, I will use it, because I still have a lot of questions, but maybe waiting for the questions from audience. Now, if somebody would like to pick, I mean, we had it in the agenda, but if somebody would like to address a little bit, or to look from your perspective on the widening countries, right? We are in Poland now having a presidency. What would you see as strength, or there is a particular strength for this part of the Europe, or we are all now already the same, or there are some elements that we are kind of specific that we can really influence the technological sovereignty, the innovation in the Europe? And here, please.
I keep it short. So, as I mentioned before, the ERICs are in a unique position, as most of us are distributed. That means widening countries are hosting parts of those 31 ERICs, and it's a huge majority. And without the contribution, we would see an imbalance, or would see the continuation of this imbalance that we have been talking about for the past decades. And if we want to become sovereign as Europe, we have to work together. Again, mentioning the silos from here. And I think we are beyond that. We do have research infrastructures that cover the full scope of the geography, but of course there are still some setbacks that we also addressed here before. We are fully aware of this, but widening countries are playing an important part also for shipping in their national investments in infrastructures that they have already put in place, like Solaris here, but also shipping in the engineers, the technicians, the facility staff, the students that are passionate to do the research. And I think without the widening countries, the European research infrastructures would not be where we are today. So it's absolutely needed. But we are not starting at zero.
Thank you. Mikael, yeah, please.
I fully agree with Antje. I can even give you some numbers, since I did prepare the third question.
Yeah.
So indeed, 75% of pan-European research infrastructures are distributed. 25% are single-sided. Also, if you look at which widening countries are members of the ERICs or the ESFRI RIs, then widening countries are members of 10 ERICs on average and 20 ESFRI research infrastructures. The average, if you take all European countries, are not so far away. It's 10 and 23. So it's very close. It confirms what you say, Antje, that in fact, if you look at geographically, in terms of memberships and participation in these infrastructures of European interest, the numbers confirm that. And also, by the way, the participation in our program has gone up drastically for the widening countries. Just to mention on the funding, it has gone from 9% in the previous framework program to 15%. So I think it reflects well also the investments in research and innovation in the widening countries. So, but having said that, so this is the realistic picture, this is the actual state of affairs. There are still improvements that can be done in terms of equal participation. There are, as we know, a distribution which is much more equal when we look at the human capacities that are available and the institutional excellence as well. So improvements, yes, but the picture is actually more nuanced than what some people think.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Somebody else? Because this question was a little bit provocative in the sense that we'll write it down and send it to ministry, just saying. We are doing very well and pretty good. Yeah, there is a question.
Monsieur Pelletier, you mentioned the importance of scientific diplomacy. I agree, very important. Building trust through collaborations. Addressing global challenges with partners. China could be a partner. What's the relationship moving forward between Europe and China in de-risking these kinds of relationship? But this is addressed to everybody.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question.
It's a tough one. I mean,
no, it is.
I'm from Canada.
It is a tough
and
one.
The pendulum has gone very far.
Well, you know, it's not that tough when you think about it. China is obviously a very important player. I mean, whatever you can think, China has a role and has something to play. The thing is that I find that China has been very strong on the international level in terms of law and access to normalization and standardization. They really, I think, have invested in these international sections in which we define what the norms and the standards are going to be. So that is very important. And I think that this role, it showcases at what point what we thought was granted, it was given, needs to be reassessed. And European-wise, I really think that this use by China of law and getting in key positions and with a very strong backing from the industry sector has been yielding results, and it shows that the strategy is there and is in place. Then I will obviously not mention the IP part of the thing that you probably had in mind. That is extremely important. When you think about it, there will be there are challenges, but all in all, we all strive to the same goals. We have the same aims. We might not take the same road to go there, but at the end of the day, we share the same planet. So, you know, we don't come from the same area. We didn't start at the same point in terms of carbon emissions and so on. We don't have the same use of nuclear energy. We want sovereignty, all of us. And that's why I say that we have to think on a European level. And France has been championing that in every sector, not only research. When we talk about defense, France has been a strong advocate for that as well. So if we want to be competitive, one country alone in the EU is not going to make it. We need to think globally, and we need to think as EU, European Union as a whole, including some other partners. When I say EU, I just also mean interested, and the widening question actually goes far into that, because there might not be lots of infrastructure for research, but there are talents and there are researchers and innovation-driven ideas there. So, I mean, we have to be inclusive as well, and we might have some values to promote while we're there, right?
Okay. Somebody wants to comment still? I see.
Make a small comment related with that, because it's related with China, but it's not China. You said we have to have a very global approach, but I think this is one part. The second part, in my opinion, is long-term. The problem we have is we are always looking at very short term. And actually, this example of China, and one example that I have been spent in France 10 years, but rare earth is a very perfect example of that. The technology of what is called in English affinement, the separation of the rare earth was French, was Rompulan, and Rochelle. And they really give them free to the Chinese. Why? Because they have a short-term problem. At La Rochelle was a contamination problem because apparently when you do an industrial process and we have people and you have a collective agreement, you have to work from 8 to 3. And of course, the what is called the sea level is changing every day, and was a contamination of the beaches. And so the Rompulan has a fantastic idea. Let's give that to the Chinese. They will produce the rare earth for us, and that will be very cheap. And we are really very clever. And of course, we get a lot of cash immediately next year. We are in the situation we are now. So global thinking and long-term strategy.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Helmut, you still wanted a comment? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, this was a perfect answer, I think. So I'm not a policymaker, therefore I talk about that as a lab director, a previous lab director. So first of all, I think we don't need a lex seneca, but we need a regulation. How does Europe cooperate with countries of concern? In general, because there could be there are several other countries around which are of concern as well. So one has to get to grips with such a situation. So particularly with China, I think I saw a pendulum going from the left wing, vibrant cooperation, now to decoupling. So if I would have asked my previous national government, can I cooperate with China? They would say, Dosh, better keep your fingers off that. No, better not, but we don't. So you can, of course, decide, but better not. So I think in my experience with the Chinese, they very much appreciate if you are very open. So I am encouraging us to be very self-determined. Not to say, we don't want this, we don't want that, but come to the Chinese and say, okay, we want to cooperate here, here, and here. And we don't want to cooperate with you here, here, and here. And with this thing where we want to cooperate with you, here is a piece of paper where all the boundary conditions for the corporations are there. So if you subscribe to that, we are open. If you don't, we don't. I only can tell you that Chinese appreciate that. A very open thing, not fiddling around. No, so to be very open-minded, so very open, where do we want to cooperate and where we don't want to cooperate with them. And what José just was saying is a natural thing, right? Of course, we need to cooperate with the Chinese in climate change. It's this is, of course, the standard example, but it's true, right? So it doesn't make sense to decouple from China. And by the way, so if you, the Department of Energy has made 5 years ago a benchmarking where does DOE stand compared to China. I was part of this evaluation group. And you could see, okay, in Nature publication, this Nature publication thing, okay, China is here, but US is still there. But we also saw the slope, and then we could predict when China will be surpassing US in high-level publications, and actually it happened 1 year earlier. It was a big message in newspapers, right? So. This thing, IP and so on, which is always put against them, this is all gone. It's essentially gone. They say, if you talk about IP, they say, Dosh, a very good point. We are also very, very, sensitive to IP regulation because we want to also safeguard our IP laws. This thing with the missing barrier between civil science and military. What apparently in one of the People's Congresses, there was a paper out which says that every result in any area must be clear, so must be screened whether there is a military application possible. I was, when one of the science ministers was in Berlin, I was actually holding this against him. And he was saying, Dosh, I don't know whether we do that we are screening every result for military applications. But he said, I would be surprised if he wouldn't. And he said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans wouldn't do it either. So, I mean, we have to be a little bit, what should I say, realistic, not naive. And we of course, we have moral, we have ethical things, and we should never give up our ethical things. But I think it's a touchy thing what I say now. But I'm saying when you negotiate, if you put the ethical things first, then you end up in nowhere. So let's talk about things which are important for us, and then when it comes to getting the work done, then you put the paper on the desk and say, by the way, this is how we do research, right? And if you don't subscribe to that, we are sorry for that. But then you have already the fish on the right on the anchor. So it's my view on it, but maybe Michael has a different one.
I will give the final maybe voice to Antti, because we have to finish soon, but maybe as a final remark.
As a final remark and as a very down-to-earth practical advice. So 1 year ago I was in Beijing at their national imaging infrastructure, and I got a 2-minute lecture from actually the research attaché from the French embassy how to do it, because I was quite concerned about how to approach such a negotiation. And the advice is go into the negotiation and think beforehand what you want to get out of this. Be proactive to go into this with 2-3 points. Not that you are there, they ask you, we want to send our Chinese PhD students to you, we want to be part of your conference, but rather like, okay, can we send someone from Europe to your place for 3 months to learn your data standards? So this is the way it works. Be proactive, think before you go there what you want to have out of this, and then I think you're set up for the negotiation.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you to the panelists. I mean, really great discussion. I would like to thank you to the audience, and the panel is closed. Thank you so much.
Merci.